Hello, and welcome to So You Think You Can Rule Persia, the podcast where we rate and review all the kings of Persia from Diocles to Yazdegerd III. I'm Sariel, and my pronouns are they, them.
And I'm Umberto, and my pronouns are he, him.
Second
Hello, everybody.
Second part. Let's go!
Yes.
I'm excited.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 68.2, Shapur II, Part 2. If you are just starting from this episode, maybe
go to the previous one.
The previous one. There's an episode 68.1, Shapur II. That'll give you important context for what happens here. If you instead still just want to know about the end of Shapur's life, cool, we'll do a quick recap beforehand, and you can listen to the end. But you have now been warned. So yeah, Sariel, what do you remember from last time? What are your expectations for today? What are your main memories from before? How are you getting into this?
I have many encountered thoughts about this man because, but it was very surprising to go from someone who has been crowned king before he was born to actually not only getting to grow up, but also getting over nobility and other powers controlling him, and then making his own decisions and actually being really good both in military prowess and also just politically, and just having a long reign where so far nothing terrible has happened. Some questionable decisions have been made, but the empire is okay.
Terrible things have happened to other people.
Yes, exactly.
But the empire's doing well.
So very surprising.
Yeah, so it's going to be an interesting time, because now we get to see the end of Shapur, and, well, you get to see. Well, what do you expect? Is it going to be a Narse situation where it just crashes and burns at the last hurdle?
I hope not.
Or just keep going better and better? And
you have mentioned that Constantine is there, right?
I mean, Constantine is dead now.
He died, and he split the Roman Empire in 3, which I don't think will go
Constantine
super well.
died, the empire got divided, Constantius took over it again. And now, just a couple years before we ended our narrative last episode, Julian came to the throne, who is, incidentally, the last pagan Roman emperor.
True. And then Christianity
he's decided to try and stab us.
Yeah.
We'll see how that goes.
We were having trouble within our borders with the fact that, Constantine declared himself emperor of every Christian.
Yes.
Including those not in the Roman Empire. But yeah. I don't know. I hope it will go well. But of course, things could go terribly really quickly. But he's been doing great, and he has an entire life of, success behind him. So
yeah, also, literally from birth, he was raised to actually rule and control empire.
And he is good at it.
Presumably, he learned his lessons.
Yeah. I think everything should be fine. And the downfall either will come because of the Roman Empire, because of the nobles or religious leaders trying to seize power, or the nobles being done with this man who has made them less powerful and trying to poison him or something, right? Or it will end fine, but then things will go terribly because of succession issues.
Okay, well, we'll see how that goes. So you think he might not be so hot on the succession?
I remember that his heir was killed.
Yes.
So I don't know if he has more heirs or what the plan is there. Yeah.
But we'll find out exactly what his succession plan is, if he is as detailed as the previous Shapur, and if he is as neglected as the previous Shapur. Okay, so let's just start with a quick recap of what happened in the first episode in the earlier part of his life. So, as you mentioned, Sariel, he was crowned while in utero.
Yep.
So that was exciting. He grew up, seemed to be a bright, remarkable child, grew up and managed to become a king of kings. Surprisingly, nobody tried to kill him, or nobody succeeded in killing him, at least. He then set off to start his reign with some wars against the Arabs that were raiding the empire. The term rivers of blood was used. So that went well for him, but was not great
ugly.
in general. It's not a lovely thing.
But you don't make an empire with like flowers and kindness,
No.
right?
Empires are flowers watered in blood. They might look nice, but they come at a high cost. He then headed off to the east, where he destroyed the Kushan Empire and assimilated it to the Sassanids. So that's his. Good stuff. And then he fought this extremely long, grueling war with Constantius, the Roman emperor, after Constantine. This war involved 3 different sieges of Nisibis, where Nisibis was not taken. Several times, despite using massive amounts of resources, it was not taken. The Romans tried to counter-invade, but they were defeated. This is where Shapur's son and heir Narseh was killed in battle. We then have that he went all the way to the east to try and fight the Chionites, or the Kidarites, which are these red Huns that are just now appearing out of the steppe, and he seems to have subdued them well enough that he could use them as allies for a while. In the meantime, on the internal front, he started persecuting a bunch of Christians because he suspects them of being Roman agents, and that's not cool with him. And so in general, he's just increasing taxes, and the Christians generally refuse to pay taxes because they're going to be used to fight Christians, so they get executed for that. On the Zoroastrian side, he has instead organized the religion of the empire and made sure that it is sort of more homogeneous and directed under the imperial banner.
True.
And then finally, towards the end, he took his Hunnic mercenaries and brought them all the way up to war with Rome, and they captured the city of Amida, destroying the 7 legions, so roughly 35,000 Roman soldiers that were stationed there, which was pretty intense.
Yep.
And a good victory on that side, and now he is relatively ready to march into Syria, but it seems that he was stopping himself from doing that because of some issues in the east. Possibly the Kidarites were unhappy after their heir to the throne was killed in battle over Amida, so maybe there was some renegotiation going on there or some disagreement. But now, as we mentioned, Julian has become emperor of Rome, and he has decided that he wants to invade Iran and copy Trajan. And he is a huge Marcus Aurelius fanboy. He's really just wants to be Marcus Aurelius.
I mean, who can blame him? For once, I find this more logical than being an Alexander fanboy.
Oh no, he's also an Alexander fanboy.
Of course, but,
But mainly he's trying to do the whole philosopher emperor thing, and he's trying to say, oh, look at me, look how wise I am, look at all this stuff. And also, he is trying to bring Rome from Christianity back to paganism. And so he's trying to establish a new form of Roman paganism, which has the Sol Invictus, the unconquerable sun, as its head. So he's trying to make parallels, saying that, oh no, the traditional Greco-Roman gods are just manifestations of this one god that actually exists.
Oh, okay, so we are bringing monotheism into
he's trying to reform
Roman...
the traditional religion so it looks more like Christianity.
Because Christianity was like,
so he wants it to find a way to beat it.
Yeah, I don't think that's the way to do it, because, I don't know. I think, this is a very, me point of view, where I'm like, well, what attracts me of the pagan Roman religion is precisely that it has a pantheon of gods and that it works differently from Christianity. But
well, if you look at religion statistics of the modern city of Rome, you can guess who won.
I mean, you don't have to tell me.
No spoilers for the rest of history, but Christianity wins.
Yeah. Which is so interesting, because Christianity it started out as any other cult did. And most of them, we know of some of them, and it's just like, oh yeah, there was this, random secret cult with, a serpent, and there was this other thing with this other god, and it's like, they sound so alien to us, but Christianity was that sides too when it started.
Oh yeah, it was that weird thing. Although, the main advantage of Christianity is that it was so intent on proselytizing and gaining new converts and gaining new people.
Yep.
That eventually just spread everywhere, and it won the race.
Yep.
In the end. So okay, but let's get down to the story. So in the year 363, the new Roman Emperor Julian changed military policy and decided to stop the defensive strategy that Constantius had been using for the past 25 years. And he decided, okay, no, it's time to stop doing this fortress versus fortress, massive siege versus massive siege, where everybody makes very small gains. Yeah, it's time to make a massive attack like Trajan did back in the day. That worked. Time to review.
Yeah, here's the thing. Of course, society and just like overall technology and tactics don't change as fast as they do nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess you have to consider if the current circumstances are similar to the circumstances at the time. Because if they are, then, like, it might work. Like you said, it's like, oh, that worked then, so it should work now. But if the circumstances are completely different, then there's no reason why that should work now.
Yeah. Also, what Julian is neglecting to remember here is that Trajan's expedition was a complete and utter failure at the end. This is like deciding, oh, I'm going to invade Russia. Who should I follow? Oh, Napoleon got pretty far. Let's follow Napoleon's strategy for going through Russia. It's like, it didn't work out the first time. The second time,
if you do the exact same, I don't know.
150 years later is not great.
Yeah.
Strategies have changed. But we'll see how well it works for Julian. So Julian decides to start a new counterattack, and he refuses all help from Arabian allies because, and I quote, Rome would give aid, not ask for it.
Well, get f***ed then. Like,
yes.
The fact that other nations are like offering help, and it's like, no, we're too good for your help. It's like, okay, then get wiped out.
Yeah.
Like,
get wrecked, son.
That is such a pretentious move, and also like such a stupid move to make. Because like,
yeah, not a good one.
It's just to look good, but if you lose, you're not going to look good anyway.
No, not really. Although later Arabic sources say that there were many Arabian allies in his army.
Mm-hmm.
So it's either possible that Julian was saying, oh, no, we don't need your help. But actually, if you have some help, maybe give it to us secretly and we'll use it. Or it's possible that the Arabic sources are just trying to big themselves up and say, no, he totally needed our help and we totally helped out. And that's why things went well.
Interesting, because this makes me think that the Roman expedition will be successful. Because otherwise I don't know why Arabic sources would like to be part of that. Because it would be easier to be like, haha, they refused our help, they lost.
The main deal is that the Arabs are trying to sort of fight back against Shapur, who is, if you remember, Shapur.
Yeah.
Shoulder piercer.
Yep.
And so they're trying to avenge their dead from a few decades ago. But anyway, Julian gathers his forces and he goes along the Euphrates River with a fleet to transport his soldiers, transport supplies, and move further down. And we're told by the Romans that they won several victories against Shapur, and they penetrated deep into Mesopotamia.
Mm-hmm.
And as usual, this is from a Roman perspective, the typical Iranian strategy that we've seen time and time again is to fight some skirmishes and then retreat, and fight some skirmishes and then retreat to get the enemy in a position where you want them to be. So whether these are actual victories in big battles, or if it's just Shapur trying to say, yes, have a false sense of security and come deeper into my empire, far away from your supplies.
Mm-hmm.
That's an option you may see. As I mentioned before, Julian is a great lover of Hellenism and the ancient past, so he invokes the memory of Alexander the Great in his invasion, and according to some Christian authors who didn't like him, he claimed to be the reincarnation of Alexander the Great himself.
Mm-hmm.
But Julian is also joined by an interesting character that we met at the beginning of last episode, but disappeared shortly after. He is joined by Shapur's elder brother, Hormizd. If you remember, during the fetus coronation, Hormizd was captured by the nobles, but managed to escape prison shortly afterwards. Apparently due to a file to cut through his chains that was hidden in a fish that he was given to eat.
Oh, I did not know that.
There we go.
This is the escaping prison
plans.
101, truly.
Yeah, hide a file in a fish and use that to get out. So it looks like what Julian was planning after his victory was to make Prince Hormizd the new King of Kings and a Roman ally. So it's always nice to have a puppet king on the throne. Hormizd is arguably more legitimate than Shapur, who was just made king by the nobles and was, definitely younger than Hormizd because he was unborn.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, as we mentioned, it looks like Julian was using the old successful invasions of Trajan, Varus, and Severus as a model. But, well, things have changed, as you mentioned. First of all, we're no longer dealing with the Parthians. The Sassanids are a different beast. We saw that the Parthians had a civil war every 5 seconds, and the nobles rebelled every 2 seconds. And also we had many vassal kingdoms, and it was a whole thing. The Sassanids are noticeably more centralized, and under Shapur, they're definitely more stable.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you remember, during Trajan's invasion, the empire was split into 3 pieces, and Trajan invaded one of the weaker parts of it, and that's how we managed to win so quickly.
Right.
The Sassanids have no such issues right now. Also, the strategy has evolved from big field battles, as we had earlier on, to this fortress versus fortress system, where everybody has a line of extremely strong forts on the border, and you have to painstakingly fight your way through each fort. But Julian has no time for this, so instead he's bypassing all the Sassanid forts and just diving deep into inner territory.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with this is that now all the Sassanid forts are at his back, and they can just cut off his supply line and his communication to Rome and whatever.
And everything, yeah.
As soon as they like. And Julian just needs to hope that he wins, because if he doesn't win, well, his retreat is cut off. So it's a high-risk gamble.
That is putting all your eggs in one basket.
Yes, pretty much. And also, Mesopotamia had been greatly populated in recent times and fortified with new cities by the Sassanids such as Shapur and Ardashir and Narse, who had built a bunch of new cities across the area, and they built a ton of irrigation canals that could also be used to strategically flood certain areas and funnel the Roman army where you want them to. So that is helpful if you want to choose your field of battle and make sure that they don't go where you don't want them to.
Mm-hmm. Heck.
Also, another element that hindered Julian was that his only military experience beforehand was fighting Germanic tribes. And he didn't expect the Sassanid Empire to be any different.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Sassanid Empire is the largest empire the Romans are aware of, compared to a bunch of Germanic peoples who were different small nations and disagreeing with each other.
Yeah.
This isn't the resources of the richest empire the Romans know. So Julian is coming expecting a fight he is used to, but he is not encountering what he hopes. Also, I love that Julian just started reading the life of Crassus to his men to encourage them.
Of Crassus?
I know. I get Trajan, sure, that, conquered Ctesiphon, fine. But Crassus just died horribly without achieving anything?
Yeah.
Is this really the most encouraging thing?
I thought we hated the guy.
Apparently Julian was excited to read from this. He presumably hoped the soldiers didn't know how that story ended and just reading some epic speeches or something. And then, we get a bunch of little omens, because those are always fun. Those are exciting to see. An omen is that a horse that Julian had called Babylonianus was killed by artillery and lost all of its finery, which was interpreted as Babylon will fall and lose all its treasures. So the Romans are seeing this is a good sign for us. Also, on campaign, his men killed a huge lion that had attacked the army. And this was, of course, a clear sign that a king would be killed on this campaign. Just don't ask Croesus about ambiguous oracles, everything will be fine. Don't ask which king is going to be killed on this campaign. Could be anything.
Don't ask
the gods
for
are mischievous.
specification and for clarification in oracle prophecies.
Nah. A great empire
Being
will be
vague
destroyed
is
if you
part
go
of
in
it.
this battle.
Yeah.
Good enough. Interpret it as you want. See what happens.
Being bad at actually prophetizing anything is part of the prophecy. So
it's part of the fun. You're not going to enjoy it if it's just going to be a clear prophecy that says you will die the 7th of June, 1943. That's going to be bad. But then we get a new oracle, which is that a soldier was struck by lightning, which, according to the oracles, was lightning of the advisory kind, quote unquote. Presumably the soldier didn't live to enjoy the advice, but fine.
What do you mean?
It's just a warning lightning shot, Serial. It's, just warning lightning. Sure, it killed a soldier, but it happens. But also I love that regarding this, the philosophers that were following Julian around said that, no, this is only lightning. It's not an omen. It's just a stronger mass of air being sent down from the ether. It's just science. Don't worry about it, Julian. It's clearly not an omen. Calm down. But, let's see how that turns out. We'll see how it goes. So Julian keeps marching towards the interior of Mesopotamia, and he finds that the Persian forts that he encounters just allow him to go by. And Julian doesn't besiege these forts, he just passes by and keeps going further and further inland.
Okay.
It's possible that these forts were directed by Shapur not to waste their resources, but to just wait and see what happens. Until the Romans arrived nearby Ctesiphon, and then Shapur started to burn the fields and supplies around Ctesiphon to avoid the Romans from being able to resupply. So they can't resupply from Rome now, because they've not secured their supply lines, and also they can't really forage for food in the fields, because they're burnt. This is kind of a bit of a high-risk strategy or rather an expensive strategy, because the Romans are destroying your lands, and you're also destroying your lands. But, if everything goes well, you get to capture a Roman emperor, which is always nice. That's a fun time.
Mm-hmm.
And along the way, it looks like the Romans also stumbled on a paradise garden around the capital with its own zoo containing bears, lions, boars, and other unspecified, more exotic animals. And the Romans, being Romans, decide to just kill all the animals and butcher them.
Of course. Because it's the animals' fault.
Because fun times.
This is such a funny way to deal with it. Not dealing with the actual problem, but dealing with the messenger.
Yeah.
This is not going to solve
it'll
anything. It's like if someone gives you a prophecy and you decide to kill the guy that gave you the prophecy. It's not their fault. They're just telling you.
Yeah, but no.
It's not going to fix anything.
Let's go for it. This will be fun.
That's ridiculous.
And this is finally when the Romans arrive within sight of Ctesiphon. And Julian looks at the walls and looks at his books. And he says, they've gotten bigger since the books.
No! What?
Damn.
What? What do you mean? Could never.
And he looks at the siege equipment he's brought and he thinks, this is not going to make it in. This is so stupid. This is not sufficient.
This is so funny.
Oh no.
Oh
yes, this is where Julian, being a big freaking nerd, comes to bite him.
This is hilarious. It's like, I read in the books how to conquer Ctesiphon.
Yeah, 150 years ago, these walls were much easier to breach, but in the past 150 years, things have changed. Damn. Well.
No.
What do we do now, sir?
This is so ridiculous.
I guess we can leave before Shapur arrives? Okay, yeah, let's leave. And so Julian decides to turn back and try to return to Roman lands because we can't take the city and it's difficult.
I love that Shapur was just like, no, let him find out for himself,
Yeah, it'll be fun. Also, it looks like Shapur was somewhere in the east because he didn't personally fight the Romans until this point. So probably he was off either negotiating with the Kitterite Huns or fighting them because the friendship is fraying right now.
Diplomacy or war, one of the two.
Same thing. One's more stabby.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so Shapur now is arriving from the east, and Julian receives news that Shapur is arriving. So Julian thinks, let's maybe leave. Let's go away.
Whoops.
This isn't good. Oh, wait, what do you mean I am surrounded by forts I haven't captured? What do you mean my supply lines don't work? Oh no, this isn't good. At this point, Shapur sent a letter to Julian. Jessica was sent over with a scroll. And this letter told Julian, hey, listen, no need to fight. We can make peace. He said, to conquer is honorable, but to be more than a conqueror gives occasion for envy. Which is to say, you've done a good enough job getting this far, don't push it now. Because if you will, bad things will happen. But of course, Julian refuses. Julian will not accept peace. He will not accept this defeat. He wants to regroup and figure out a way to actually take Ctesiphon. Now, also, a weird thing that we get from Arabic sources, which might just not like Shapur, is that according to them, the Romans actually did manage to capture Ctesiphon, and Shapur just comes back and retakes it. Unclear why that might be the case, but, it's a weird alternative tradition. Although, it's generally accepted that the Romans didn't take Ctesiphon, because it's kind of embarrassing to say that you went that far and found out you couldn't take the city actually, and then left. If they won a victory, the Romans are the type of people to remind you of it.
Mm-hmm.
So Shapur is finally coming, and he is going to face Julian and see who comes out on top. We are told by the Roman sources that he marched at the head of his army with a helmet shaped like a ram's head, encrusted with jewels.
Mm-hmm.
Although this might just have been for negotiations, we don't know. Well, you want your King of Kings to look good and to look exciting. Now it seems like Julian wanted to have his men march into Iran and wanted to stop them from retreating through his ships that he used to bring all the supplies. So like many other people through history, including, for example, Cortez in Mexico, Julian burned the ships so that his men could not use them to run away. And also perhaps to stop the Persians from using them, but to be fair, this is their territory. They probably have ships. And we're told that at this point, Shapur used the Zopyrus gambit to try and trick Julian. Do you remember the Zopyrus gambit, Serial?
No.
This is from way back in the day of Darius.
Yeah, I remember papyrus. Not
Yes.
papyrus, but I can't remember what it was.
Well, I think this was for the capture of Babylon, where Zopyrus had his ears and nose cut off and had himself horribly whipped, and then went to the Babylonians and said, no, Darius has been treating me terribly, let me command your armies, and then he let Darius in.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're told that 2 Persians voluntarily had their noses cut off so they could defect to the Romans.
Voluntarily?
Apparently.
Voluntarily, air quotes.
I mean, they still worked for Shapur after that, so must have been somewhat voluntarily.
Damn.
And they worked as guides for Julian and said, no, Julian, just go back behind this next hill. It'll be fine. Trust me. You'll find a ton of supplies there. It's going to be okay. Don't worry. I know you're hungry, but I'm sure we'll find something just after the next hill. Oh, wait. One more hill. I'm sorry. I forgot. But this time for sure. And some sources even say that it was these 2 Persians who recommended to Julian to burn his ships and say, no, you don't need all those supplies on your ships. It's fine, just burn them. Your soldiers will only be encouraged to run away if you leave them. It's going to be fine, Julian. It's going to be okay. And so Shapur is making sure to burn all the supplies that the Romans could find. And now that they can't travel quickly along the rivers, they're slowly starving to death. And anybody who goes off to try and find food is picked off by horse archers. And everybody who is left behind for hunger or as a garrison is killed off by horse archers. And then in June of 363, Shapur finally used his main force to attack Julian's army. And he used elephants and managed to absolutely crush the Romans. But the best prize of all, Serial, is that Julian forgot his armor when charging into battle.
Wait, no.
Julian forgot.
Like, you don't
Julian is a big old nerd, Serial.
No, don't forget your armor. What are you talking about? Like, I can understand that, like, he didn't have time to put it on or something, but, like...
He might not have had time, but, he was taken by surprise, didn't put his armor, and charged into battle.
Just as is.
Yes.
And got pierced several times, I assume.
Got pierced many, many times, Serial, dying either directly in battle or shortly afterwards.
Yeah. I'm not surprised.
Yeah. In the meantime, Shapur was personally leading his men, shining in armor with his jewel-encrusted ram helmet, with a massive mace, sowing chaos among his enemies, with a horse that was also armored, because, that's what you do.
Because it's war.
Exactly.
I do love that Shapur does fight along his men.
Yes, he is very
much in the
much
first
in the
time
front
we
lines.
hear about it.
Yeah. He is very hardcore. He is not leaving the fighting to other people. He is there doing the job.
Gonna get high points.
Yeah. And I also like that one of our sources compares Julian's death to Cyrus the Younger, which feels like a very different situation, but it's a shout out. It's nice to remember the old times.
Sure. I guess
enough.
they felt like bringing it up.
Yeah. And we don't know who personally killed Julian, but certain Christians say that it was actually a Christian Roman who killed him because he was a pagan emperor. Because according to these sources, Shapur offered to give a great reward to the man who had killed the emperor, but nobody came to claim it.
Oh.
So, who
weird.
knows? Maybe it was somebody who just died afterwards. It's a battle. It's messy.
Yeah.
Other sources say it was an angel of the Lord who came to restore Christianity to the Roman Empire.
Get wrecked. You specifically.
You specifically get
You don't
wrecked
get
for trying to
visions
become
and revelations, you get death.
Yes. Hardcore. Bad times. According to the Shahnameh, instead, Shapur attacked the Romans at night while they were drunk and disorganized in anticipation of their victory of retaking Ctesiphon, and Shapur managed to capture Julian, cut off his ears, and give him a sort of nose ring that is reserved for animals, and then he had him die in his dungeon. Although, again, this might be a tradition that's mixing up Shapur I capturing Valerian and Shapur II killing Julian, so
we've done
it might just be a mixture
Roman
since it's
Emperor
the same
capturing.
name. Yeah. One killed an emperor, one captured him. I mean, I assume we can get a stuffed Julian. That'll be fine, I suppose. But who knows? Okay, Serial. Now picture this. You're a Roman soldier. You're far from home. There are no supplies left. You're starving. You lost a recent battle. Your emperor is dead. Now what?
How far away are we from home?
You are several hundred kilometers from home with several forts in between that and you.
I guess I am Persian now.
That happened to all the captives. The captives were deported to Khuzestan, where they founded new cities. The ones that survived decided, we need somebody to negotiate. You, Jovian, would you like to be our new emperor? Please, we need somebody to talk to Shapur.
Yeah, of course, you need to appoint a new emperor. I was thinking, if I am like just a random soldier, I'll be like, I guess I live here now.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because it's that or dying.
That's fair. And hilariously, it looks like the Romans might have picked the wrong Jovian. Because there was an important officer called Jovian.
Right, no, I remember this. I remember this from Totalis Rankium.
Exactly.
Oh my god.
And they just picked another guy called Jovian and was like, you're the emperor now. Me? I'm sorry.
I did.
What? Okay, I guess. I didn't know things were that bad, but fine. If the line of succession is so bad that your boss from the office is now in charge, wow. Bad things. So Jovian is now emperor. Congratulations. Hope you have fun. He has no food, money, or a way home, and their Arabian allies have mutinied after not being paid. So they try to resist and figure out a plan to march back home, but eventually they just accept to make peace with Shapur. And the terms of the peace are, we are so sorry for invading. This went terribly. We were hoping for a better outcome. Please let us go home. We'll give you anything you want. We'll give you anything, Shapur. We're so sorry. And Shapur is a merciful conqueror. He decides that he's just going to take what he came here for. It's going to be fine. Well, first of all, let's settle the important matters. We're getting the Valerian hat stand back from the Romans. Thank you very much. We'll keep it in Ctesiphon from now on. That's nice. Good. It had been a while since we'd killed a Roman emperor. It's nice to hold on to traditions. But then we look at the political circumstances, because Shapur manages to regain Mesopotamia from the Romans, the bits that Narseh was forced to give back, and he gains a series of 15 important fortresses on the border, among which the very, very important city of Nisibis
Right.
that Shapur had besieged 3 times and failed. Now the Romans are just handing it over.
Yeah.
Julian sucks.
We did it.
So now, great, we got Nisibis, didn't even have to fight for it. Great success. Nisibis is going to be an important border city for the Sassanid Empire for quite a while. It's not going to be going back to Rome for a bit. Also, cancelling Narse's peace treaty, the single city trade policy has been repealed, so trade can now flow freely, and the empires are now entirely ready to go. And also, what about Armenia? Well, the Romans agree that the Persians can do whatever they want in Armenia. It's not Roman business. They're going to stay out. So, with this great victory, Shapur has managed to re-extend the empire to the height of Shapur I's time. So, the humiliating defeats that Narse had suffered have now been cancelled. And we got to kill an extra Roman emperor, which is always cool.
Yeah.
And this peace was intended to last for 30 years and would far outlast it, except for a few smaller skirmishes. The next reasonably large war between the two empires would happen 58 years after this peace treaty. And the next war of a similar scale would only happen 150 years afterwards.
Okay.
So, with this peace, we have bought safety for the empire for over a century.
That's great.
Which, progress has been made. Good job, Shapur. That is very impressive. Apparently, the terms of the treaty were delivered by the head of the Suren family, called Surena in the sources, which is probably not the same Surena from Crassus's times, because he died 300 years ago. And this Surena escorted Jovian to the newly captured city of Nisibis, where the population of Nisibis saw the Roman army arriving and said, "Yay, it's our friends, the Romans."
Yeah.
And then the Romans didn't get into the city, they just, sheepishly walked past.
Yeah.
While the Persian army entered. It was like, okay, that's new.
I guess that's happening.
I guess we fought for nothing then. Great, Thanks, Julian. It looks like the Surena allowed the Christian population of Nisibis to move to Roman territory before the Sassanids fully took over and said, you know what, if you want to stay, cool. If you don't, you can leave. That's fine. Al-Tabari gives us a slightly different version with some juicy details about Jovian, because he said that Shapur treated Jovian generously enough. He didn't make any outrageous demands despite having him in the palm of his hand. Because a while ago, Jovian had secretly sent messages to Shapur to warn him of Julian's plans.
Right.
And that worked out for him. And also another term of the treaty which I didn't mention is massive monetary reparations to the Sassanid Empire, because Julian had raided Mesopotamia. That's not fun. So the Romans have to pay for the price of their invasion and ensure that everything can be restored to the status it once was. And I like that Shapur said that good men don't cut down trees, so that the Romans should plant a new tree for every single one they cut down and build walls to protect all those gardens so marauders couldn't get at them anymore.
Right.
So that's nice. It's nice that asking to build gardens is war reparations. That's cool. And yeah, what's really interesting here is that despite Shapur officially, according to Roman sources, either losing or drawing in this war, because he just kept retreating, he just won by drawing the Romans in as close as possible and cutting the head off the snake when he found the opportunity.
Yep.
So everything is going great. And it's also quite telling that Shapur is following the wisdom of Shapur I, because they didn't use this victory as a launching board for future invasions against the Romans, because they understood that if you're going to do things properly, like Constantius and Shapur were doing for decades beforehand, it's a really expensive war for not much gain.
Yeah.
If you're going to try something crazy ambitious like Julian, you're going to fail.
Yeah.
So why not just settle on these borders and accept that this is as good as we're going to get? Let's just end on a high note and not invade anymore, because that's just going to cause needless suffering. So let's just make peace with the Romans. How does that sound?
Sure.
And also, as an extra bonus, this is the last time before the end of the Empire that a foreign army is going to march in sight of Ctesiphon.
Wow.
Ctesiphon is going to be secure for the next 250 years thanks to Shapur's victory.
Wow.
So if you're an inhabitant of Ctesiphon, you're never going to see war again. Your grandchildren are never going to see war again. Their grandchildren are never going to see war again. And their grandchildren are never going to see war again.
Incredible.
Because, good.
That's great. Yeah. Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
This was all greatly promoted by the royal family as we get a relief from Shapur's successor, Ardashir II, where it shows Shapur giving him the ring of the Far, of the right to rule. It's Shapur who grants the right to rule to his heir.
Wow.
While the two stand over the corpse of Julian, which might even show that Ardashir had a significant role in the campaign, although it's not quoted in the sources that we still have.
Mm-hmm.
It is also a little bit weird that Ardashir isn't really Shapur's son. According to most sources, he's his brother.
Okay.
Which is a bit weird because, considering the events that led up to Shapur's coronation, he didn't really have any other older brothers around.
Yeah. No. Like, we know this.
Yeah, exactly. So some scholars think that Ardashir was Shapur's son, actually. He was just one of his older sons.
Yeah.
But Al-Talibi claims that he was a brother of Shapur just born a month after him.
No. That's not how it works.
But,
From a different mother?
From a different mother, yeah.
I guess.
They had multiple wives. He was a half-brother, and he was just happened to be born a month after him. Who knows?
I guess. Although it's weird we haven't heard of him. What was his original son
Narse.
called? Narse.
Yes.
Hmm.
He died a while ago, but yeah, who knows?
Yeah. No, because I was like, well, maybe there was another son who was called Shapur. And this is a brother to that Shapur and not to the father.
It's possible, but then why would he succeed? We'll get to the succession plans later on, but essentially, we have these two options where it's like, is Ardashir just a brother, or is he just an eldest son? Who knows? Mysterious.
Yeah. Okay.
But Serial, we've bought 150 years of peace with the Romans. Let's enjoy it. Let's enjoy this peace and prosperity.
Mm-hmm.
So like his namesake, Shapur set out to build several new cities, in particular in Khuzestan, where he settled the Roman prisoners of war. One of the most important of these cities was the city of Nishapur, which just means New Shapur.
Mm-hmm.
So, nice. We have new cities, and these are all large fortifications and helpful in the construction.
Mm-hmm.
He also rebuilt the ancient city of Susa with Roman prisoners of war after it was destroyed due to a rebellion, so it needed some reconstruction. And in general, we're told that during his reign, Shapur commissioned many public works such as irrigation projects in Mesopotamia, building bridges and new villages to take care of the countryside, so the environment is prospering, we're getting larger fields, feed more population. It is roughly around this point, in the years following this, that Ctesiphon becomes, according to certain metrics, the largest city in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just doing so well. Mesopotamia's a massive breadbasket, and Shapur is making sure that everything is going as well as possible.
Breadbasket.
Yes. But it's interesting to note that Shapur didn't really produce any monuments in Persia proper, like his ancestors. But he moved these to Khuzestan and Mesopotamia with a different artistic style that had more prominent divide images. So Mithra and Ahura Mazda in particular. Where the presence of Mithra is kind of interesting because it was a formerly popular symbol in the Kushano-Sassanid kingdom, and now that it's been conquered, it might be that the god is being brought more to the inside of the empire. And also it's interesting that these portraits are no longer generally royal portraits showing victory over their enemies or receiving the far from a divinity, but more static images, sort of like the King of Kings posing for a royal portrait. And we get a new art style, Serial, because we shift away from earlier rock reliefs.
Yes!
To
Exciting.
a bunch of silverware.
Huh.
We get a lot of bowls and cups with a bunch of royal imagery.
Interesting. Were these just like people's cups? you would just have the monarchy on your silverware, or was these from like nobles or from like the castle?
Yes, I was thinking about that just today while walking past a souvenir shop in the UK with a bunch of monarchy plates and stuff.
I see.
This was not that sort of thing. This isn't for, like, Bob the peasant. This is for nobles. This is essentially the king giving you a priceless Fabergé egg with his face on it and saying, remember me.
I see.
So it's generally prestige gifts. These are made of like pure silver covered in gold and with extremely fine, beautiful detail. And it has the dual purpose of telling the noble, hey, look, I like you. Here's this extremely precious artifact. But also, the noble is going to hang this thing in their house, in their palaces. And you always have the face of the king staring down at you, doing some epic deed.
Yeah.
So it's
also,
like, it's very Big Brother is watching you.
Yeah.
But also, be loyal. Remember who was good to you.
I just find it interesting that we have these.
We have lots of these, and it's very cool.
How come they were like so well preserved?
So I'm not positive about this. If anybody knows better, please tell me. But what I generally know is that these were hidden in hoards of great amounts of riches. Mm-hmm. So if times were bad, you would just bury a bunch of money and your important silverware in a hole and promise to come back for it once the bad times have finished. And then bad things happened to you and you never came back, and archaeologists eventually
the bad times
find
never
these.
Finished.
Yeah.
The bad times finished you instead.
Yes. So I'm not sure about the detail, but it's what I know from certain similar hoards, at least.
My hypothesis was either... Because technically, there are many more laymen, people, like normal, just run-of-the-mill peasant people, than aristocracy.
Yes.
So it's much more likely that if we find remains, it's from peasants and not from like a special noble. Mm-hmm. But also, richer people do have a more opulent way to be buried, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that might, like if there's a monument around them, then that might withstand more than just like someone being buried, you know, under the ground, under a tree.
Yeah, generally also, if you are a peasant, you tend to own things which are more easily degradable.
Yeah,
as opposed to,
of course,
you know, a noble where you have glorious things of gold and silver and everything. But yeah, so we're getting a bunch of these different plates and cups where they generally show royal imagery and have either stories about the king. So for example, for a later king, Bahram V, we have a scene that is reported in the Shahnameh. So it's him hunting with one of the members of his harem, one of his harpists, I think. And we basically have the story behind that hunting scene, and it's very cool. It'll be his face of faces when it comes to it. But other times we just have kings showing their prowess, showing, look how powerful I am, and I can just afford to give silver away to my nobles because I'm so rich and powerful and everything is going so well. And also, you'll be happy to know, Serial, just for our sake, the crown that our Simurg has in the podcast logo is the crown of Shapur II. So we finally made it to that point.
Hell yeah!
So the one you chose out of all of them that you thought looked best is Shapur II's crown.
Cool. Amazing. I know that Plumas was very happy that I chose this crown too.
Yes. It's a nice Sassan crown of the world. It's always good.
It's an impressive one.
It's good stuff. So, okay. Let's get down to fighting some more because there's no rest for the wicked. Because the Treaty of Peace with Rome didn't say that we get Armenia. It says that the Romans aren't going to interfere in Armenia. So we still actually need to get Armenia. So Shapur marched into his new country, although it's great that the Romans say that this is the violation of the treaty. But, you know, either there was a translation error that said that nobody should interfere with Armenia, but it's unlikely that they thought they got off that easily.
Yeah.
But anyway, Shapur gathered the help of some friendly Armenian nobles and lured the Armenian king who had joined Julian's expedition and helped in the invasion. They lured this king to a feast and he was taken prisoner.
Haha.
Yes. He was later blinded by Shapur and tied up in silver chains and thrown into the prison with the best name ever. This prison is called the Fortress of Oblivion.
Damn. I
which
guess.
is pretty intense.
It
It will feature in our podcast at least one more time that I've researched.
Damn.
It is
That's terrifying. Place. But also, if you have a prison like this, then you should give it a cool name, because otherwise...
you might as well. Nobody can escape from the Fortress of Oblivion, except one character in the future.
In our podcast?
Yes.
Ah!
Somebody will escape from the Fortress of Oblivion, and he is really cool.
That's legendary. That's amazing.
Yes, it's good stuff. Yeah, the Armenian king in the Fortress of Oblivion would end up taking his own life. Because, well, you're in the Fortress of Oblivion, you're blinded, you're probably in terrible pain. Fair enough. Armenia was then placed under the control of a Sassanid governor who was entrusted with pacifying the kingdom. But he was attacked during negotiations with the former Queen of Armenia, and that led to a prolonged civil war with a Christian and Roman-friendly candidate versus a more Zoroastrian and Iranian-friendly candidate. The Roman sources say that the Sassanid governor then switched sides and asked for Roman help, but this sounds a lot like some Armenian nobles who switch sides, because they often do that. That's how they've survived for the past few centuries, so...
Yeah, this is kind of how it works. Like, at this point, they're just there, and they're like, who's gonna be overruling us today? This empire, okay.
Yeah, but they've survived so far, you know. I think, if anything, they're going to be slightly concerned now that Rome and Iran are at peace, because, well, now, if they can't flip-flop from one side to the next, are they just going to be eaten by somebody? What's going to happen?
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, in retaliation for this civil war, a bunch of large Armenian cities were deported into the empire with the usual formula. Supposedly, almost 200,000 families of Armenians were deported into Iran and Mesopotamia, which would serve to strengthen the Sassanids at the expense of Armenia and also making any more future resistance more feeble. Another part of the Roman treaty was control over Georgia, where Shapur appointed his own puppet king. But this puppet king was replaced by the new Roman Emperor Valens some years later, and this resulted in a small proxy war with the Christian and Mazdan nobility respectively fighting for each side. Although eventually the Romans would come up with issues with their Christian Armenian nobility because they were Arian at this point. So it's a different brand of Christianity to the one that's in the Roman Empire. So they're going to start replacing each other and it's going to be fighting a lot. But in any case, in Armenia, Ammianus, our Roman historian, says that Shapur was immensely crafty and, according to his advantage, either humble or arrogant. Which just sounds like a mean way of saying that Shapur is good at negotiating and not actually humble or arrogant. Just making sure that everybody sees the side of him that they need to see so that he can get as much as he can from this Armenia situation. So all this resulted in a final peace treaty where Roman Sassanids agreed to keep Armenia officially neutral, but in practice it was divided into two, with a pro-Roman king controlling a fifth of the kingdom in the west, and a pro-Persian one in the east controlling the other 4/5 of it. So a similar agreement was also obtained for Iberia, making sure that we now have a great majority of the Caucasus under our control. Mm-hmm. So that's quite nice. But we had to settle for this reduced quantity and not getting all of it, because there was a crisis brewing in the east, as we get reports of war with the Kitterite Huns in the Far East, because they have expanded their empire to include the Indus Valley. So they have moved in the gap that the Kushans had been occupying. And they had been fighting with Shapur, taking stronger control of Bactria. So Shapur is having to deal with the situation and having to sort of stabilize a new border despite these people constantly attacking.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that we have barely any information about this, apart from a few nebulous Chinese sources, but we know that something is going on and it's distracting Shapur from the Western Front, which he's mostly accepted is going to be as is. It's not worth it. We've obtained a good peace with the Romans. Let's not fight.
Yeah.
But in this later years, finally, the Shahnameh tells us that Shapur managed to enjoy life and enjoy his old age. We are told, and I quote, that his life had become a garden within which grew roses without thorns, and he had no enemies anywhere, and evil had no refuge in all the world.
Damn.
So, going well.
Impressive.
And finally, in the year 379, Shapur died peacefully after a lifetime of war, where he managed to still come out on top, with an empire at its strongest since its foundation, despite having recently been at its lowest point. He left his throne to his brother Ardashir, with the qualification that Ardashir would rule until Shapur's son, also called Shapur, was old enough to take power.
I see.
So I thought it weird that Shapur had no adult sons and had to,
especially after one of them had been
semi-regency.
killed in battle, so I assume like many years in between, and I'm like, well, he must have had other children, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
But it's likely that either he didn't really have very many sons,
oh yeah, true.
so maybe he just had few sons. It happens. Or it could be that a lot of these sons were killed during his many wars, since based on his age, it looks like the new Prince Shapur must have been born sometime after the peace with the Romans.
Yeah.
So maybe all his older children died in war, and then
Damn.
when there was finally peace, he had another son, and this was his heir.
That's cutting it close, buddy.
So that's cutting it close. And so he just said, okay, Ardashir, just take care of my son for a while, you be king, and then give him the throne when it's time.
Is Ardashir a person to trust with this?
Find out next episode.
Aha.
But it could also be possible that, as we mentioned before, Ardashir could just be an older son of Shapur, and Shapur said, Ardashir, I think my younger son Shapur is probably better than you are, but keep the throne warm for a few years. Be a good boy. Okay, bye. I'm off to see my ancestors. So, who knows? Could be that. But yeah, that is the end of the life of Shapur II.
That's so impressive.
your
How many
thoughts,
years did
Ariel?
he even, like,
An impressive
'Cause I
amount,
assume
we'll
he
find
just-
out.
dies of old age? So,
Guys of old age, yeah.
so like, what, he reigned like 80 years? Something like that?
We'll get to see.
Incredible. What the hell? Wow.
Yes, we'll go back to it, but just to give you an image to refer things to, Queen Elizabeth II ruled for 70 years, and she wasn't crowned as a fetus.
Yeah.
So, we'll see.
Incredible.
And yeah, so what are your thoughts? How did you expect this to go?
That was really impressive. I did not expect him to do this well. And to end this well either. Like, just nothing bad happened.
You know,
Only thing is the
went well.
questionable choices that he made towards, like, the people outside of his empire, and also towards the Christians in his
Yes.
empire, right? Like, I don't think he's a good person, but it's very impressive.
Very
for a
few
ruler.
rulers are good people.
Yeah.
It comes with the job. Remember Constantine being baptized just before dying, because
Yep.
he had to do a lot of bad stuff to get as far as he did.
Yeah, if you are playing the oppression game, it just goes this way.
Yeah, from our Patreon episodes, Chanakya's parents broke all his teeth because they thought he was going to become a king, and that would mean he would necessarily be a bad person and go to hell. So,
Good.
Times are tough.
But don't break your child's teeth.
Yes. Chanakya did grow up to be a bit messed up. But
Yeah.
To learn
Yeah.
about that, join Patreon.
That's terrifying. Very impressive.
So, okay, Serial, are you ready to rate Shapur II and
Yeah,
see how he
let's do
does compared
Let's
to all
do it.
his predecessors? Okay, let's go. Our first category is final moments. How interesting was his death? Dying of old age after a long, successful reign. And let me read the quote from the Shahnameh again. After his life had become a garden within which grew roses without thorns, he had no enemies anywhere, and evil had no refuge in all the world.
Like, that makes it really impressive. I like the quote, so that gets extra points. But the death itself is just...
The death itself is meh. But considering what
But
you expected from
unexpected.
him at the
Yeah.
beginning, you expected him to
Yeah.
die at like 3 years old, choking on a
We
plum
are in
or
like
something.
that one universe where this happened.
Yes, in all other universes,
We are in the alternate
he
history.
dies before making it 16 years old. But yeah, I'm just very impressed that he made it this far and it went well for him. Like, our past 2 kings have been murdered and things haven't been going great. But he just makes it. He's doing very well and he's happy. I think I would give him a 2 because we do get the information that he dies peacefully, and also I'm just happy for him. So I'm going to go for a 2. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll go for a 2 as well. I really like the Shaname quote, but then the death itself is not that interesting.
Yeah.
So he gets 2 points.
Okay, so with a 2 and a 2, he gets a 2 out of 10 for final moments. Our next category is battle hardness. How good was he at war and fighting? Where to start? There is a lot here. There's a lot of material. So first of all, just a generic thing. We are often told, even with some admiration by the Romans of all people, that he is always in the front lines. He is fighting. He is sowing chaos among his enemies with his massive mace. He is there in the thick of it. He isn't just some armchair general sitting kilometers behind the lines. So that's impressive. Then let's list all of his victories. He managed to annihilate the Arab threat that they had been raiding the empire for a long time. He makes sure they stop. Rivers of blood were mentioned. He then conquers the Kushan Empire. It no longer exists. The eastern border is secure now. Good. He then fights with the Romans and holds tight with them several times. He stops any invasion attempt. He does besiege Nisibis many times. He is always repulsed. But in the end, he does manage to capture Amida and destroy 7 Roman legions, which is as much as Crassus lost at Carrhae, which is pretty damn impressive. He then fights the Huns, the Kidarites in the east. He manages to defeat them and gain them as vassals for a while. He then fights this war in Armenia and manages to gain control over Armenia. He fights his war in Iberia. He gains control of most of Iberia. He also then fights the Kidarites for a bit at the end of his reign and keeps winning there. He manages to stabilize the border. There's no great defeats. Oh, and I forgot to mention, he absolutely annihilates Julian and reverses all the losses.
That was a thing that happened
before.
On this episode.
Julian is defeated. Julian is crushed. On the downside, you could say that it's generally not very flashy warfare, but you could say that it's just how things are now. Because with the Romans, he does try to take Nisibis 3 times, and 3 times he fails. He tries really hard and he keeps going at it. And then he doesn't get full control of Armenia and Iberia, and he also doesn't get in full control of the Kidarites at the end because they rebel. The question is, how much can you blame him for this versus how much is it a virtue? Because the thing is that if Shapur had died halfway through the wars with the Romans, then what would he had to show for it? Well, he had tried to attack Nisibis a few times and didn't manage. And then he died. That wouldn't be very impressive, but since he kept on for decades, being strong and fighting and being there, good. And it's also the fact that with the Romans, he is facing, like, Constantius is a very skilled ruler and general. Constantius knows that he doesn't have to, like, do grand attacks. This new style of warfare is we try and take little forts a bit at a time. It's immensely costly. And then we just go about it that way. And then when Julian, who is a much less talented general and less skilled, tries to go inland to attack Ctesiphon, well, Shapur wipes the floor with him. So clearly Shapur is a very good general and a very good leader of men, but you could argue that he isn't an Alexander the Great, which just wins a victory and conquers half the world. He is a slow, methodical, constant worker that manages to gain victory through just a ton of hard work. And it's not something that he just comes by through things that are especially visual, let's say. So what are you thinking for Shapur's rating here for battle hardness? How would you consider him?
Like, did he lose any battles?
It depends on your definition of lose, because he doesn't win a bunch of sieges of Nisibis.
Well,
he retreats in front of Julian, but you could argue that's just a strategy to draw him in and just stab him when he's unaware.
I mean, yeah, because we did crush him.
Yes. So, how do you count that?
Lost the battle, won the war.
Yeah, it depends. Do you count that as losing, or do you count it as, oh no, it was a clever strategic maneuver and it worked out?
I want to give him a high score, so...
And then in the east, and again, losing at the end of his life, presumably he was tired and wanted to have some peace at last, but he sort of compromises with the Romans to gain the large majority of Armenia, but not all of it. Mm-hmm. He compromises with the Kidarites in the east to give them some land in Bactria, and he keeps all of it. But, he is definitely getting more than what he had originally. But, there are these... It depends if you want to qualify them as defeats or not. He has these small blemishes on his record that, perhaps somebody who is undefeated and forever glorious would not have. Yeah. But he wins most things in the end. But he could have won harder, you could say.
He could have won harder.
But do you want to consider this as... he could have won harder, or is it just like, no, he did as much as anyone could have. This is the best anybody could have hoped for.
Yeah, I guess we have to leave space for someone undefeated.
Because, for example, a 10 is Shapur I. Shapur I subjected 3 Roman emperors to him, just freely marched through Eastern Rome without any challenge, defeated anybody who came against him, and then went home.
Yeah. That's what I mean. It's like someone who has had a chance to lose, have been in many battles, and yet has been undefeated. That would be a 10. So I guess we can give him a 9.
But then you could also argue that, well, Shapur II ruled for so long, and this new method of warfare is one that privileges staying calm and just trying time and time again and never stopping.
Yeah.
I can see arguments for a 9 and a 10, really.
I think it should be at 9.5, so one of us has to go for a 9 and one has to go for a 10.
I feel like that's fair. I'd go for that. Do you want to do 9 or 10? What is your heart telling you?
I'll go for a 10.
Okay, very well. Then I'll go for a conservative 9 and say that he could have done a bit better, so fair enough.
We're finding an agreement.
Yes. So with a 9 and a 10, he gets a 19 out of 20 for battle hardness, which makes him 5th place among all our King of Kings. Just behind a few. So he is just better than Ardashir I, just behind Shapur I. So he's there. Mm-hmm. He's doing some good stuff there. And he pushes Darius the Great out of the top 5, incidentally. So somebody's going to be livid.
Listen, it happens. There's a lot of good ones out there, so.
Yeah. Our next category is scheminess. How good was he at plots and manipulations? So there's some untold here and some that is told. On the untold side, he managed to somehow survive to the age of 16 and pacify the nobles. How did he do that? Nobody tells us, but he did it. He may have had some really cool Antiochus III style shenanigans here. We don't know of them, but clearly he succeeded where his father and his brother failed and got murdered. So whatever he did, managed to well maneuver around the court. He also probably managed to use threats and promises against the Kushano Sassanids to reassimilate them into the empire. Don't know how schemy you want to consider that, but it worked. We can say that it depends how you want to consider some of his military strategies, such as drawing Julian deep into the heart of the empire only to just destroy everything and get all he wanted. You can see if that's part of scheminess or more part of battle hardness. You can argue for both. He then managed to invite the King of Armenia to a feast, the King of Armenia who had joined Julian on campaign to a feast. and he had him captured and thrown into the Fortress of Oblivion. So that's pretty schemy.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say that's pretty much it. I can't remember any other especially schemy actions on his part.
No, it wasn't particularly...
Yeah, it's not terribly schemy, but I feel like there's something there at least.
A couple of points, maybe.
Yeah, I'm thinking...
Like a 2.
A 2? I think a token 1 for the getting to grow up, because we don't know anything, but something must have happened. It must be something. Then... a couple points for the Armenian king. That's, always good to scheme. And I'm going to add 1 more point for the military strategy of drawing Julian in and ending him.
Yep.
So I think I'm going to go for a 4. You sticking with a 2, or have you reevaluated?
I don't get very schemy vibes from him, but maybe I'll go for a 3.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, he's not super schemy, but there is something there.
Yeah, there's some scheminess going on.
Okay. So with a 4 and a 3, we get a 7 out of 20 for scheminess. Our next category is shock factor. How shocking was this man? Pretty much, quite yes. Rivers of blood were mentioned. The shoulder piercing, the ripping off of shoulders. The being cursed with a prophecy that eventually the Arabs would have their revenge.
Right. What happened with that?
We're going to have to wait another 330 years for that to happen, but, getting there, or 300-ish years for that to happen. Because don't worry, eventually the Arabs will have their turn ruling Iran. But yeah, so there's this massive extermination of the Arabians around him. Not great. That is quite shocking. You could add as shocking the fact that he was crowned as a fetus. That doesn't often happen.
Yeah.
That's
pretty shocking that he is is he the youngest monarch?
Based on my research, he is the only monarch to be crowned in utero.
Yeah. So that's
pretty cool. Shocking, then he managed to calm the nobles down, somehow, surprisingly, unexpected. He started up persecutions against Christians. This is the first persecutions we get. That's not great. He's not starting out by killing them. He's starting out by giving them more taxes. But the Christians just refuse to pay the taxes and eventually are executed for it.
Mm-hmm.
So, not great. That is pretty shocking. Other shocking things, he manages to kill a Roman emperor. That's nice. I don't know if you'd consider it shocking, but it's a positive spin on things.
Right.
He conquers Armenia and deports, according to one source, 200,000 families from Armenia into the empire. They are all deported and relocated. As we mentioned in Shapur the First episode, this is probably not deporting them as slaves. It's more like, you live here now and you can't leave, but you are free to do what you want.
Yeah.
So, could be worse, but
Yeah.
Suboptimal, I would say.
Still impactful.
Yeah. So, that is what I'm thinking for shock factor, and anything else. Can't think of anything else off the top of my head. If there's anything that stood out to you that you remember, let me know. But
I think you summed it up pretty well. I can't really...
Mm-hmm. So I think it's quite a bit of shock there. Yeah. Also, he did the whole genocide thing when he was in his late teens, early 20s. That also somehow makes it worse.
Mm-hmm.
Feels like if there's an 18-year-old who's absolutely massacring a bunch of civilians.
Yep. There's no honor in that.
No.
As much as you want to place honor in war historically, which, still debatable to me.
Yeah, but if it's like an Iliad style, it's just me versus you and we're both equally ready for this fight, then okay.
I can see the cultural reasons why war might be considered honorable. This is not, however.
No, absolutely not. So yeah, I'm going pretty high for shock factor. I was trying to think why not a 10, honestly.
Yep. Honestly, yeah, the entire 2-episode series has been a shock factor to me.
Yes.
I did not expect any of this to happen, so I will go for a 10.
Yeah, I can't think of any reason why not. I think a 10 is entirely there, so...
Yep.
Congratulations? Maybe? Is that the right word? With a 10 and a 10, you get a 20 out of 20 for shock factor, equaling Alexander the Great and Musa, which is pretty cool. Our next category is Aaron Shine. How good is he for the Empire in general and Iran in particular?
I guess great.
Pretty much, yeah.
Like, just amazing.
Again, let's list his achievements. Let's list what he did. He stopped the... Well, he did so much. Okay. He stopped the Arab raids. That's good for the Empire. Bunch of border territories were being raided. People were being kidnapped and sold into slavery. That's not happening anymore. He expands the Empire to the east, taking the Kushano Sassanids. In the west, he takes Armenia and Iberia and basically avenges the humiliation that there was under Narse. That's pretty good. He manages to kill a Roman emperor. That's always great. He manages to strengthen royal authority. We don't hear a peep from the nobles during all his reign. They were meddling so much. It was since the Bahrams that the nobles have been increasing their power. And Shapur just tries to clamp down on that and ensure that things are going better in that direction. Then internally, he strengthens the religious role of Zoroastrianism. He summons a council and everybody agrees this is what's going to happen. This is what the religion actually is.
Mm-hmm.
And starts essentially divesting royal authority and putting it into a separate branch of the nobility, essentially. Sort of like what is happening to the Romans. He then founds a bunch of new cities in the empire. A lot of them with deported people, but that is improving the empire itself. And he improves irrigation. He increases the productivity of the land and makes sure that everything is going a lot better for the common people. He ensures that the nobles aren't being overbearing with their tenants anymore. That's nice. He also secures a bunch of trade routes by making sure that they're under his control. So that's helpful. That's going to bring prosperity to the empire. And he inaugurates a new artistic style. He starts this whole new silverware thing, which is interesting and looks good artistically. It's very nice. And to cap it all off, he leaves off a reasonably good and stable succession. He leaves it into the hands of a capable adult who will pass it on to his son, who is presumably deemed to be a good young man anyway. On the downsides, I could say that he spends a lot of the Empire's time at war. So it's not ideal to be constantly at war, but to be fair, he does buy the Empire 150 years of peace in the West and 250 years of Ctesiphon being untouched, which is good. Not much more you can say about that. As another possible downside, you can say that, again, he does start to persecute Christians, which isn't great and isn't really helping the Empire overall. So, yeah, what is your verdict? What do you think? I mean, of course, it's a very high score, but how high exactly do we want to go for Shapur II is going to be an interesting question.
I mean, I struggle with the exact number.
So what are the numbers you're struggling with? Let's start with that.
It's mostly considering... I try to consider what it would be for someone living there, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But it's still I mean, I guess if you were in the Empire... it depends. If you're a Christian, for example...
Yeah, if you're a Christian in the Empire, things are worse off for you because...
It's terrible, yeah.
You need to pay more taxes, and if you don't, you'll get killed.
But as a whole, in the sense of, the Empire for the Empire's sake. But
yeah.
That's also not one of my favorite ways to... Or not how I prefer to grade this, because then we fall into the issue of instead of the Empire serving its people, is the people serving the Empire.
Yeah.
And I think that's the wrong way to go about it. Society should serve humanity and not the other way around. Mm-hmm. Of course, the Empire is still there and doing better, I assume, economically, geographically.
The Empire is doing better. Yeah. It's bigger on a map. But yes,
it's more stable.
It is definitely more stable, and you've had several decades of a king ruling over you.
Yeah, and we got rid of a lot of immediate threats from around the Empire.
Pretty much most external threats have been eliminated.
So
and new cities are being founded, new construction is being made, fields are being cultivated, art is flourishing.
So I'm really, I don't think...
The only thing in your if I'm a common person there, is that if you're a Christian who doesn't like lying about your faith, like we saw that the Jewish people are also being persecuted in a similar way, but they're saying, oh, no, these are worshippers of the fire. They don't count. It's okay. Don't worry. But the Christians are like, no, I'm a Christian and I'm proud of it and I don't want to be persecuted.
But also,
for my
we
faith.
haven't taken this into consideration other times. Or not that much. Like, of course, there's people in the Empire who are going to have it worse off. But, like, overall, as a place to live, on average, I feel like the life quality has gone up. Mm-hmm. So, if anything, because there's no war.
Yeah.
Which is huge.
Yeah, it's been a lot of war, but we've bought peace at the end of it.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know. I would go for like 8, 9, or 10. Probably not a 10, but up there.
Mm-hmm. You know
what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I feel like, because I agree on that. I don't feel like it is a 10 because I feel like he's solved a lot of the problems of the Empire and he's improved life for the people in it. But it was bloody.
Yeah.
And mostly, I feel like he succeeded in most things, but he didn't really entirely enact as systemic change as he could have. So there will be someone else later on that will try and fully, not exactly abolish the nobility, but reform it into a way where they don't have the power to be threatening. So he is doing a lot of that, but I feel like he spent so much time climbing out of the hole that the others had dug themselves into that he didn't have much time to do as much as he could have. And then you're right in adding the fact that the persecutions are not good. They are making the Empire a worse place. So I feel like for that reasons, I'm going to go for a 9. Which means that he still did an amazing job, but it could be better. So yeah, I'm going to go for a 9. What are you going for?
Yeah, I think I'll match you.
Okay. So with a 9 and a 9, he gets an 18 out of 20 for Aaron Shine, putting him behind Ardashir and Shapur I. Our next category is Face of Faces. What do you think this man looked like?
Well,
let me send you his crowns because he has 2 types. Okay, so Serial has finished their drawing. Let me pick it up and I'll tell you all what it looks like. So, yes, very nice. We have a nice image, which is the one that you said at the beginning you wanted to do of him. So what we have here...
I mean, he's done so many other things in his life, and I could do an entire 3-meter painting of like his life, right? But
fair.
I am so tired.
That's
so
fair.
very tired.
It happens.
And everyone would recognize this. So
yeah, this is the key thing that everybody knows about Shapur. Come on. So what we have is a woman here with a large pregnant belly. She's holding her hands over it. And upon this belly was placed a crown, the crown of the world, Shapur's, with a bunch of little waves along the bottom, some crenellated triangles on the side, and the big poof that we usually see in these type of crowns, and the little diadem strands hanging over by the end. So yes, this is the first moment Shapur was endowed with the Far and became King of Kings, before even having melanin at all in his body.
Yep.
So, exciting. So if you want to see this image, if you're on Patreon, you could go on the Discord. Otherwise, you can go in the episode notes down below, or go to our website in Sariel's Portrait Gallery. And now let me show you, Sariel, what he looks like. I have 2 examples of silverware. One is a cup, and another one is a plate. The picture of the plate is mine, because I saw it when I went to the museum the other day, and it was good.
Because of course it's in the UK.
Yes. Of course it is, yes. Okay, let's go. Let me show you the cup first, and you can describe it, and then we can go for the plate. There we go.
Ooh. Huh? Is this a cup?
Yes, it is upside down. Basically, the neck hole is the drinking hole.
That's such an odd, I guess.
It's probably mainly decorative, I would imagine.
Yeah, I don't think it's the most comfortable to drink from. But the crown looks
probably
really cool.
Like the fine china that grandma brings out for special occasions.
Yeah, it's essentially Shapur's head with the crown, and so there's like two main reservoirs where you could have liquid, both like in the head itself and then in the poof that the crown has. But it's good that we see these crowns like finally with some relief, because sometimes they're a bit hard to interpret, so this has no mistake. Like, this leaves no room for interpretation.
Yeah, this is clear what's going on.
Yeah. And it's a cool head. I like the stylization of the beard and the mustache as well. The mustache goes like on the like wavy on the sides, which is really fun.
That's very nice.
Yeah, this is really cool. Show me the plate.
I'll show you the plate now. Here it is. It is a hunting scene.
Oh, this is on profile, so this like reminds me more of a coin, but it's a full body portrait of him okay. So, like, both riding a deer and killing a deer. Well, I don't know if it's a deer or some other sort of...
See, it looks like a deer. The way I interpret it, he has jumped onto the deer and is stabbing it.
Yeah, so it looks like his horse is also below it. So I assume he was riding his horse alongside the deer and then jumped on the deer to kill it.
Yeah,
and stabbing
I feel like
it on
that's
the neck.
the idea.
And holding it by one of the antlers.
Mm-hmm.
It's really cool. And you can see, like, decorations billowing behind him.
Yeah.
And the cabbage of arrows, like, on his side.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really cool dynamic scene.
Yes. The thing about these plates is that they're often very dynamic, which is a cool feature of them.
Maybe I should, like, make my own version of this.
That would be cool. That would work. So what do you think of his Face of Faces? What do you think of this new style he's going for?
This is awesome. Like,
nice.
I'm gonna give him a 10. He's gonna get so many points, but he deserves them.
I think, yeah, I like that you don't often get to inaugurate a new style, and it's cool. It looks very nice.
It's fully 3D, not like 2.5D, so like you can actually see it. No, like, although obviously the cup and the plate are very stylized. Like, I don't assume him looking like this, but...
Yeah, but it must have looked enough like him.
Yeah.
The nobles were like, oh yeah, this is my boss. I should not anger him. Did you hear what he's done to people who anger him?
Right.
Okay, so yeah, I think I'm going to agree with your 10, and we can have a go there. So with a 10 and a 10, he gets a 5 out of 5 for Face of Faces. Our next category is lengthiness. How long do you think this man reigned?
I said it before. I'm going to say 80 years.
80 years is a bit too much. He reigned for pretty much exactly the length of Queen Elizabeth II's reign. He reigned for 70 years. So,
right. Fair enough.
If you can imagine, all of us have lived through the reign of Queen Elizabeth II. That's the same thing. He's going to be timeless to generations of Sassanids. He is going to be the guy who is the Persian king. Because, look at him, he's been there forever.
Yep.
So he ruled for 70 years, from 309 to 379. We've basically jumped a whole ass century in just one guy, which is always fun. And yeah, he breaks our lengthiness scale, because 70 years divided by 10 gives us a 7 out of 5 for lengthiness.
Yeah, well, you did say that there's a couple that don't fit the scale, so...
Exciting.
Is he like our number one? I wouldn't be surprised.
It is an exciting position, because that brings us to the final score, which is a grand total of 78 out of 100 points.
Yeah,
which puts him in second place.
Second to Cyrus, to Alexander?
Darius the Great.
Darius, yes.
And what put him down were the 2 points of persecuting Christians.
Yeah.
That we gave him in Ehrenstein.
Yep.
He was drawn back by that, so next time, don't persecute people.
Persecuting Christians and honestly, more than that, the genocide. You know.
Yeah, but the genocide
Although
brought
that
him
would
up,
get
actually,
extra points, because that would be like a shocking...
Yeah, it's just that they're foreign, so they don't count in his case. But, the persecuting his own people lowered him enough that he just makes second place. He is second, which is great.
Because Darius' scheminess, nobody's going to get close to that.
And he's just above Antiochus III, another child king turned successful king.
Yeah.
But
It's
Antiochus
such a good
actually
story.
failed
These are
at
such
the
good
end.
stories. I'm so impressed that they sometimes work out.
Yes.
Ridiculous.
And unlike Antiochus III, Shapur II died peacefully after
yeah,
getting
and the
things
Romans
sorted.
didn't come
Yeah,
back
exactly.
to bite him.
He managed to finish this. So that's impressive. Our top 5 now are Darius the Great, Shapur II, Antiochus the Great, Alexander the Great, and Shapur I.
Yeah.
So esteemed company for Shapur II.
Yeah. Very impressive.
And that brings us to the final question, which is to say, is he esteemed enough? Is he fetus king enough? Is he glorious
Don't
enough
call him that.
to be
Oh my god.
a Shahanshah, or is he just a Shahanah?
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
Let's
If
go.
he's not a Shahanshah,
ding, ding,
come
ding,
on.
ding, ding.
We gave him 2
We have another.
episodes. The man deserves it.
So good. So impressive.
So now he can go into the Paradise Gardens.
With his thornless roses.
Yes, with his thornless roses, and meet his possibly grandfather, possibly great-grandfather, Narse, and say,
unclear.
Ancestor, I have avenged you. It's all going to be
Yeah.
fine. I'm so sorry
I
for
did
everything
it
that
finally.
happened. Yes, I have humbled everyone.
Oh.
There is nothing beside.
Only thing he could have done, but well, I mean, he could have done some things better, but securing his successor more properly would have been good. I am worried about how that's going to play out. Then again, we had this issue. Wait, let me find my notes. By which I mean my doodles.
Yes.
Shapur tried to do this.
Yeah,
The
Shapur
first.
1 tried to do this. Let's see if
And it's still like...
fate repeats itself with Shapur 2.
He did like amazing regarding his succession, and yet everything went to shit, so...
Yeah. But, join us next time to find out how Ardashir II does. Will he abandon the throne when he was meant to? Will he not? Will something terrible happen in the meantime? Who knows?
Yeah. Thanks for listening to these 2 episodes.
Yes,
I hope you had as
our
much fun
second
as we did.
two-parter. There are 2 more 2-parters on the way, but
Oh,
you'll find out when they
exciting.
happen. In the meantime, if you'd like to support us, you can join us on Patreon, where we have a bunch of extra episodes there for you. Would you like to look more in depth in and around this Iranian world? Well, that's where you can find it. We're also just finished voting, actually, on the new series, which is going to be one among the enemies of Iran, including Ptolemy III, Pompey the Great, and Odenathus, or religious travelers, St. Thomas in India, the false prophet Alexander Dionysus in India,
Dionysus.
or the last king, Artabanus IV, Antiochus VII, and Demetrius II. Those are going to be coming up soon, but otherwise, for the past, we've had Mani, we've had Cartier, we've had the Maurya kings, we've had
Ashoka.
Alcibiades. There's a bunch of people. It's very exciting. True. If instead you'd rather not support us monetarily, that's fine, but you can just give us a review on your podcast app of choice. It doesn't have to be anything big. You can just write a small few words saying, hey, I liked this podcast. Instead of scrolling social media, you can do that. It's quick. It'll be fine. It'll be good. It's
I mean,
cool.
you're already
Come
on your phone. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. It'll take you like a minute. It'll be fine. Do it for us.
It doesn't have to be a long review. It can just be like, podcast good. That's
Yes.
enough.
But if you do a longer one, that's also cool. We'll be happy to read it.
Yeah, we'll read them, and it's very fun to know what people think of it.
Yes. So yeah, thank you all for listening, and without any further ado, we hope you have a lovely week, and we'll see you next time with Ardashir II. Goodbye.
Take care. Bye.